Readers of Reddit. r/AskReddit. What's a fact that sounds fake but is actually legit? The entire state of Wyoming only has 2 escalators. Wyoming has a smaller population than Alaska. Wyoming has a smaller population than some mid-sized cities. 580,000. The city I grew up in was 118,000. Wyoming has a bigger population than Iceland. The state of Wyoming does not exist. Think about it. Have you ever met someone from Wyoming? That Netflix was founded a year before Google. Google was actually something of a latecomer. The first generation of internet companies made people rich, then crashed before very many people even knew what Google was. I think most current internet users don't appreciate just how incredibly bad search was on the internet pre-Google. PageRank changed everything. Your finger can feel microscopic things. So my wife is lying then. r/suicide by words. The Giza pyramids were built when mammoths still roamed the earth. By the time Queen Cleopatra took the throne, the Great Pyramids were already ancient, crumbling ruins. We live closer to the time of Cleopatra than she lived to the building of the Great Pyramids. That blows my mind. We actually live closer in time to the Tyrannosaurus Rex than the Tyrannosaurus did to the Stegosaurus. This really isn't our planet. Cleopatra lived closer to the moon landing than the building of the pyramids. Mammoths built the pyramids. Solved it. Oxford University was founded before the Aztec Empire. Hold up. Wait a minute. You mean that school that Benedict Cumberbatch went to? You mean Benadryl Cabbage Patch? Pineapples take about 2 years to grow. Also, Dole has genetically modified a pineapple to grow to about 25% of a regular pineapple. Just the perfect size to fit in the can. Nintendo was founded in 1889. They also were originally founded as a playing card company. Most people don't really realize either fact. At its furthest away point, you can fit every planet in our solar system between Earth and the Moon. I think it's just barely, though. Right? Edit, yeah? Of the 234,555 miles to the Moon, you could fit all planets in with about 5,000 miles to spare. Almost enough space left to fit Op's mom. A polar bear's liver contains enough vitamin A to kill a human if eaten. You don't even have to eat all of it, just a few ounces. That's why the custom is if you kill a polar bear you must throw a party. To ensure you don't die from eating too much delicious polar bear liver pate. The Pacific Ocean is so large that there is a point where you could tunnel straight through the Earth, and when you come out the other end, you are still in the Pacific Ocean. Also, there is at all times a pair of points on opposite sides of the Earth, where both the temperature and air pressure are the same. And this is true for any 2 continuous variables. Fun fact, you know the old dig all the way to China bit? Turns out the antipode, exact opposite point on the Earth, for just about all of North America is in the Indian Ocean. In fact, there are only a handful of places where if you went straight through, you'd pop out on land. Also, if you did have a straight through tunnel, if you vacuumed it so there was no air resistance, you could drop objects into it at one end and they would gently pop out the other with almost zero velocity. When I was a kid, I looked at a globe to figure this out and was disappointed. There is a point in the Pacific Ocean named Point Nemo, which is the furthest point from land. In fact, it is so far from land. The nearest humans are often astronauts in the International Space Station when it passes overhead. The ISS orbits the Earth at a maximum of 416 kilometers, while the nearest inhabited landmass to Point Nemo is over 2,700 kilometers away. Also that's where Cthulhu is imprisoned. I'm pretty sure it's where Gorilla's headquarters was located at one point. It was called Plastic Beach. Polar bears have recently been migrating further south and mating with grizzly bears, creating a hybrid called Drola bears. They were separated for so long they took on different phenotypes, but they aren't distant enough to no longer be able to mate and create viable offspring. Radiolab just did an update on that. Turns out all the hybrid bears are all descended from one single female polar bear. There's only a handful of them, and they might just die off. Polar bears are breeding with grizzly bears is how it was originally reported, but it's more like a polar bear did a weird thing and mated with a grizzly. There's some hybrids running around, but they're definitely not the new normal. The 15 to 20 largest container ships in the world create more pollution than all of the cars in the world. Container ships and cruise liners use some of the nastiest fuel available anywhere. If you have $10 in your pocket and no debts, you have more wealth than 25% of Americans. I was so ready to count myself lucky until I remembered my student debt. Canada has a smaller population than California. Toronto, Montreal and Vancouver cover 1/3 of the population in Canada. Pluto has not gone halfway around the sun since its discovery. Didn't even get to do a half revolution, from being found, to being a planet, to no longer being a planet. Edit. Now I'm learning that it might regain planet classification. What a wild ride our little buddy has been on. What a crazy year for Pluto. The longest domestic flight in the world is in France, Paris to Reunion. Until April of next year. Then it'll be overtaken by flights between Boston and Honolulu. Edit. Distance is actually still Paris to St. Denis. But the time in air is expected to be longer from Boston to Honolulu. 11 hours 10 minutes versus the projected 11 hours 40 minutes Boston to Honolulu flight. A chihuahua is more closely related to a grizzly bear than to a hyena. Makes sense. Have you ever met one of those things? I've watched Ratatouille before. Well, seeing as hyenas are actually more closely related to big felines than canines, it makes sense. Hyenas only share traits with dogs because of convergent evolution. Same thing with wasps and bees. Wasps are actually closer to ants. Fungi are actually more closely related to animals than plants. They breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Big deal, I can do that in my sleep. Saddam Hussein was given the key to the city of Detroit in 1980. Other people given this honor: Stevie Wonder, Jerome Bettis, Steve Zerman, Elmo, Big Sean and the Jackson 5. I don't even know how I feel about all that. John Tyler, born 1790, has 2 living grandchildren as of 2017. Not great-grandchildren, just regular grandkids. I think he was in his 80s when he had a son, and his son was also pretty old when he had these 2. America is 3 people old. For the less informed folks out there, that's US President John Tyler, the 10th President of the United States. There are 2 living people who are direct grandchildren of the 10th President of the United States. Their father was born before the American Civil War started. Their grandfather was born less than 10 years after the end of the American Revolution, before the invention of the steam locomotive. There are more libraries in the US than McDonald's. I've never seen a library in a McDonald's. I think you might be onto something. The state of Maine has more black bears than black people. Edit. 15,000 black people. 30,000 black bears. You mean African American bears? There was no grass in dinosaur times. It just seems so strange because it's so ubiquitous today. There wasn't. What used to be on the soil then? The dinosaurs. There were plenty of ferns. The best thing for you to do if you're stung by a tarantula hawk wasp is to lie down and scream. Edit, laying down prevents you from falling over, hurting yourself when you're in the throes of pain, and the screaming helps cope with the pain level. Nothing else is really going to help you. Excuse me, a what? It's a wasp that is a hawk for, it hunts tarantulas. Tarantula hawk wasp. Pretty sure it means it sells tarantulas. Water is a bad conductor of electricity. Pure water absolutely is an insulator. Water is also really good at containing things that are good conductors of electricity, therefore most water, non-pure water, is a good conductor of electricity. I had a chem teacher show this off. It blew our 6th grade minds. She took a beaker of pure H20 and had this setup of a light bulb and had it plugged in. The wire ran down this plastic piece and then broke and then lead back up to another wire to the light bulb. She said I can't touch both contacts because I would die. Duh. But if I take this water, and she then submerged the plastic piece and the connection into the beaker of water. And nothing happened. She even stuck her finger in the water. Then she took a beaker with tap water and the light bulb shined. We were just shocked. Komodo dragons can reproduce asexually. Edit, when humans fall, the Komodos shall rise. I actually learned about this in my biology class last week. The professor asked us to give differences between plants and animals, and I said that animals reproduce exclusively through sexual reproduction. They pointed out that Komodo dragons, and some species of lizard that is 100% female, make that incorrect. Oh, and some jellyfish reproduce through budding. Okay, so I just asked the TA and he said the difference is that animals arise from embryonic tissues and plants get their carbon sources from the air. This one gets passed around commonly, but it's pretty amazing if you haven't seen it before. Suppose you had a sheet of paper that was large enough so that you could keep folding it in half over and over. The sheet is obviously very large in area, but it's just a humble 0.0039 inches in thickness. After about 7 folds, you're just around the thickness of a regular notebook. After 10, it'll be as thick as your hand. Nothing impressive. After 23 folds, you have a folded paper towel that's just about a km tall. Now we start to get interesting. After 30 folds, congrats. You're in space. Add another 12 folds to take you to 42, and you're ready to walk on the moon. After 51, you can touch the sun. With 81 folds, your paper tower is almost as thick as the Andromeda Galaxy, approximately 141,000 light-years. 90 folds will get that paper tower as thick as the Virgo supercluster, contains about 100 galaxies. After 103 folds, you've broken free of the observable universe, approx 93 billion light-years in diameter. Exponential growth is a hell of a thing. The Reddit Vigilante would like to thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe for more great content every day.